What's going on, lifers? Welcome to another episode of Sick, Scared, and Stupid. I'm your host, Jake Thomas, and today's guest is coming to us by way of Massachusetts. He is the founder and COO of Pluck Seasonings, grass-fed, derived seasonings that include organs. The only thing in the market. Talk about a guy that broke into a blue ocean with something that an industry definitely needed and clearly wanted. Without further ado, Mr. James Barry, Chef James Barry, welcome to the show.
Brother Jake, thank you so much for having me.
Dude, tell us about Pluck. What crazy-minded idea did you have thinking that organs needed to be in seasoning?
I know, right? I still am in awe, like that I am the person that created a product that wasn't lab made, that was simply adding two natural ingredients together, and no one had done it. And I'm still in awe of that. But it really stems from I am a big believer in whole animal. I don't
Yeah,
believe in just ribeyes. I don't believe in just liver. I believe we should be eating whole animal and utilizing when we slaughter an animal. The best way to honor that animal is use the entire animal. And I believe that most of us in America are not eating organ meats. We're eating plenty of meat, yet we're still very nutrient deficient. I think it's something around 95% of America is nutrient deficient in some vitamin or mineral. And so I just was like, well, I believe organ meats are one of the tools to get those nutrients. And I was like, but we have some major hurdles because either you think they're gross, you don't know how to cook them, or you don't know how to source them. So I was like, I got to solve that. And that's ultimately that what drew my crazy mind into saying, well, let's combine. I feel like the first guy who like combined peanut butter with chocolate. You remember those Reese's, those commercials?
yeah,
It's like, oh, mad scientists take the freeze dried powdered organ meats, which is already dry, shelf stable, and then combine it with dried herbs because those are shelf stable too. And now you have a shelf stable product, so you don't have to worry about it going bad. And the herbs and the seasonings will make it taste good. And then you don't need to worry about cooking it because it's the seasoning. And then also bonus, there's no new habit, which
mm,
is a killer for people, right? I mean, we
mm,
saw that with COVID, that all these health habits just flew out the door and people resorted to what their addictions are, just to
yeah,
those kind of comfort foods because new habits are hard to keep. And so I'm looking for things that are easy. I'm looking for things that don't require new habits. And I'm looking for things that are delicious. I'm a flavor hound, so I like things that taste really good.
well, amen to that. And you did a good job with the product because it tastes good. So I can say from personal account, which is
Thank
freaking
you.
important, I would say, for a seasoning because it's like if it's not, it's like why would I use it? It's a garnish, why would I mess with that? Like, what part of your like culinary expertise, like how much did that play into it? Was it more about like did you just see something was missing, or was it more about palate, like you kind of touched on a combination of things, or like what things did you leverage to really bring into that, or was it just like kind of a voila eureka moment?
No, I'd say it was a slow build, and just a combination of kind of all these pieces of myself. I mean, one is as a chef. So I've been a chef for over 20 years, and I was never interested in just being, I don't know, a generic kind of chef that just could make foie gras or something like that, or just, like I didn't want to be like the most amazing chef. What I wanted to be was a chef who understood health and nutrition and could help people in their everyday eating. Like I truly wanted to help people get healthier. And so I've always looked at food like as how can I make this better? How can I make it healthier? And really kind of realizing I had to meet people where they are. And for my money, it's comfort foods. Like if you can make a comfort food healthier, now you're meeting people where they are because everyone is gravitating towards comfort foods. You know what I mean? Like
Oh yeah.
it's easy for us to think that everyone is like us, cares about their health, eats good food, takes care of their body through exercise. But the reality is, if and anyone can just drive through the U.S. or just go to any other area that's outside of your immediate circle, and you start to see actually there's a huge epidemic going on. And it's like people are truly unhealthy, and I think it's we're all limited by what we know. So if you can meet someone where they are and just make little shifts, that's kind of what I started to realize as a chef is like, okay, just little shifts that become big shifts over time.
Yeah.
Um, and so that's what I focused on. And then also combining just my knowledge and interest in nutrition over the years. And then I guess just a mixture of being a father. I think when having kids is really um, it's really laser focused me on what matters, not only with my time, but also with like, okay, I want the most bang for my buck if I'm going to be taking the time to cook for my kids, feeding them. I want to make sure that that food is something they're going to eat. And that's one of the biggest things I hear all the time is like people be like, oh, I made a pate, but my kids didn't eat it. I was the only one that ate. And I'm like, boom, waste of time. Okay. So
Mm.
two, it's like, what foods you're going to give them, and people in general are giving kids like multivitamins, right? And I'm just like, that's not going to work because a lot of that stuff just leaves our system. Some of it's fortified, it's laboratory isolated vitamins. You don't know what someone's actually taking in. Sometimes they get too much. So I wanted it to be real food. I wanted to be able to give them Mother Nature's multivitamin. That
Yeah.
power punch of just whole real foods, and yet I didn't want it to be something that I was gonna waste my time on. And I think a lot of parents we're either co-creating picky eating or we're wasting our time a lot of the times. Just kids won't eat what we're making. So I just want to be efficient and effective.
So comfort foods, huh? I mean, oh boy.
Yeah, how did you? I mean, you didn't come out of your mama's womb eating the way you do. So what did you used to eat like as a kid?
Um, Great question. My mother was really big on whole foods, kind of a pick it, pull it, kill it philosophy. That's just how she grew up. My mother's from Mexico and
Oh, okay.
was brought up that way. Didn't have, bags and wrappers and really processed anything. Not because it was demonized by their household, but just because that's just not how they ate. And they ate in a wholesome way. Her mother came from a ranching background. Her father was a crop duster of all things, but it was just the generation that they grew up in to where it was very old world and kind of rooted in that within the kitchen and within their own, I guess, personal health. So they saw things as whole food ingredients to cook with, and that came through or permeated through my mother to my brother and I growing up. So packing lunches for school, my brother and I were the kids that had 7 grain or sourdough bread with an almond butter or nut butter of some kind with celery and raisins and honey and bananas on it. And when you're like in first grade, nobody wants to trade you for that shit. Like in an American school, nobody wants to trade you for that, all right? Or bring in like
Right.
a tuna fish sandwich, like tuna salad sandwich. Nobody wants to trade you for that in first, second, or third grade. All my friends had like Lunchables pizza or Lunchables first, and then when Lunchables came out with the pizza, it was like, oh my god! And I was like, anybody want the peanut butter, banana celery? And people were like, get the fuck out of here, dude! Like, no, and I was like, God, those Lunchables look so cool. So we'd have to kind of like find our way to have those things and try those things. But my mother did a really good job of keeping us interested in what she grew up on, and we were, but it just the world was changing so much. You know, I was in first grade in 1990, so it was like the advent of so many of these foods. Kids cuisine, lean cuisines, or all the Stofers, all those just boxed, processed, microwavables and TV dinners was. I mean, that was part of the world. So it was hard, I think, to keep those things away from us. And she allowed some of them to kind of filter in naturally without us feeling imprisoned. But I definitely retained a lot of the values and appreciation from how I grew up. So I think she did a pretty good job.
So this is interesting. So that's amazing that you grew up that eating like that. More things that are ingredients versus things that have ingredients.
Yeah. Oh,
But
that's well
how,
said.
but
That's well said.
how did you deal with the one thing that most parents, most of us deal with, which is you try to raise your kids eating food like that, but then the minute they're outside of your home, they eat whatever the hell they want. And so you're constantly battling with that. And it sounds like you're acknowledging like, yeah, we did want that food, but how did it play out? Did you, you know, binge eat, junk food when you could, or did you kind of always like did you always kind of have a nice balance?
As a kid, we didn't. My brother and I did not like binge on it. It's not like we would get places and be like, "Oh my God!" Like the things I did binge on, funnily enough, were you remember Encyclopedia Britannica,
Oh
the
yeah.
collections, the book collections. When I would go to friends' houses who would have that like in their house, the whole collection, I would just be like, "Oh my God!" Because that was like the internet for us back
Yeah,
then.
that's
Remember?
true.
You
Yeah,
like
yeah, totally.
literally, it was
Totally
like
was.
that was the internet, or like almanacs, or like the Discovery Channel, Nat Geo, like collections on animals and stuff. I was like, I would just hammer that stuff. That was what I used to binge on. Snacks and little treats and sweets and things that were not necessarily purchased in the household. We would get them, but I was never like, oh my God, I got to eat these until the cows come home. I never had that as a kid. As I grew older, it changed, and I was eating more process things more regularly and frequently, especially like later in life when I was drinking and kind of partying more and just not really thinking about it too much. I definitely was, but at the same time, I didn't always associate with what I was eating as to being, bad or unhealthy. Like I knew nothing about seed oils, at the time.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking like, oh, these fries are okay, like they're just potatoes, right? Or like this chicken, uh, these wings are all right, even though there's skin on, it's fine, but they're fried. It's not a bad oil. Like, they're not deep fried or not covered in flour. They're covered in their own skin. That shouldn't be that bad. Um, yeah, like I didn't have that connection whatsoever. So as far as in like things causing oxidative stress, I knew nothing about.
I
And
didn't. Yeah.
like
I,
what it was going in my mouth and my teeth, like I knew nothing about that.
I didn't learn. So when I was in my early 20s, I got a kidney stone.
Mm,
Um, and it was the process of passing that kidney stone and being able to ask the doctor, saying, like, A, what the hell was that? And then how did I get it? And how do I never get it again? Because it was so
yeah.
painful. And the doctor was like, well, what did you eat and drink? And I was like, oh. And it was the first time that I connected, oh, what I eat or drink affects my health. And I was
Mm,
in my early 20s.
nice. Lucky
I'd
you
never,
then.
literally, it never even occurred to me that what we eat would dictate, like, oh, this is why you're constipated, or this is why your skin's breaking out, or this is
Yeah.
why you're having trouble waking up in the morning. It just never even occurred to me.
I wish I could have made that connection early too, because I had like really bad acne as a
Mm.
kid in high school, and I mean like just pimples galore and like big whiteheads and like boils. Like just I was so self conscious about it, hated it. Look in the mirror sometimes, just be like, "Fuck, I don't even want to go to school. I don't want to go outside. I don't want to go to my soccer games. I got to go to a dance. Like, ugh, sucks." I would have never thought it had anything to do with what I was eating. Nobody told me that, you know? And to look back and be like, yeah, it was probably all those fucking lean cuisines and hot pockets and just, bagel bites and all these things they're in, the common American household that they seem like they're whole ingredients, but like, all the additives that are in them, like you said, you're either eating ingredients or things that are made of ingredients. Well, I was eating ingredients with things that were made of ingredients. That doesn't make sense,
Yeah,
and that's what
isn't
most of
it
us do. Most of us eat
totally?
ingredients that are made of ingredients, and like that shouldn't be that way. It should just be you're eating ingredients. And I
But
love that you said that, because I'm about to run that to death.
but
But
isn't it interesting? Isn't it interesting though how there is this kind of, I can remember when I met my wife. She's
I
Canadian,
hope
and
so.
she said she said, here in the U.S., your government doesn't get your back. And I was like, huh? I never thought of it like that. She's like, oh no, in Canada, the government's got our back. They take care of us. And I was like, what? Like, didn't even occur to me to think that way. But if you think about it, if you take that concept and you look at our food system, Like, I think we're born and we kind of socialize into this world and we just assume, like, oh, if the food is being sold in a grocery store, that must mean that it's okay for us to eat it and it's
Yeah.
safe and it's there for our health. That is,
Yeah.
there's nothing in it that's going to cause issue. And I
Yeah.
think we just carry that through our childhood and many of us into our adulthood until we get sick, basically. But it's really fascinating because as you pull back the curtain, you're like, well, wait a second. Like, what is the real purpose here of anything that's being sold in the grocery store? It's shelf life. It's
No.
absolutely shelf life because if it can't be on that shelf long enough to sell, then they will most likely not make a profit. So everything in that packaged food is there to make it last longer on the shelf. Where even the fresh stuff, right? Because now they put in, like, even in the meat, the prepared meats, they have those little pads in them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Those pads have chemicals in them to, like, basically keep it as fresh and as colored, that specific color as long as possible. It's like
Yeah.
there is nothing in that market that's truly designed for our health. I mean, it's very only a couple of things probably.
I mean, it's funny you say that about the things being designed and being safe, like in the U.S. compared to other countries. My uncle talks about that with Mexico in the sense that he says, in the U.S. you have all the rights in the world, like on paper. We literally we have a right to everything. Legally, we have the protection that comes with that, the infrastructure to support that. We have on paper those. But he's like, but in Mexico, we got all the freedom we want.
Hmm.
Personal, individual, unadulterated, just freedom. Like, hey, you're walking down the street and I kind of want to take a leak on the sidewalk. Go for it. Probably won't get arrested, probably won't get in trouble. Maybe it might depend where you are, but like, you know, you do that in the wrong place in the US, you're going to get tased, maybe shot. Like, it might not work out for you too well. But
Totally.
you
Well,
have
it's
every right in the world here.
yeah.
You don't have Big Brother down there the way it exists here. Complain about the systems, judicial, executive, legislative, whatever, here, but those do exist. Down there, they don't. The
Yeah,
government,
sometimes
the
to their
infrastructure,
detriment.
yeah,
Sometimes to Mexico's detriment, but yeah, I hear
yeah,
you. I hear
but
you.
you got freedom. Like there's just like man, you wake up and it's like there's unquestionable freedom, and you go into the store and see what's for sale and what's available. Like or driving down the street and seeing all the stores that are open, the food places, the fast food especially, and think like, hey, it's sold with a smile. It's got a jingle in the song. We all know the tune, the hook line, like the slogans. They're all friendly and playful. We grew up on them, so they should be okay, right? They're marketed that way, but like, man, it literally couldn't be further from the truth. So yeah, it's a battle out there, and it's a battle of rights and freedom, freedom of knowledge, the right to know, some type of freedom of information, the right to be healthy. And that's what I think is under attack, man. That's why I say all this stuff is a war. Like this is my new battlefront, is trying to
Well,
get awareness out there, similarly to what you're doing, like talking about ingredients, not ingredients to ingredients.
well, I mean, your shirt, make milk raw again, right? It's like, I mean, that's a milk to me is a perfect example of loss of freedom. It's like
Yeah.
you
Oh yeah.
can't you can't buy milk raw in most states, and if you even cross the state boundary border with raw milk, they could prosecute you or
It's
give
easier
you a
for me in the
ticket,
town that I live in Texas to go source out meth,
right? Than raw
literally, or
milk, totally,
heroin, easy, than it is to get raw milk.
totally. Yeah, I mean, and that is a perfect example. And it's like if you think about it, everything, the government will say that everything went down a certain path for a reason. They'll say like, oh, this is for our safety, but as we know, as we kind of go deeper down the rabbit hole, it's like, no, it was for someone's profit. That's ultimately what it was. It's
Yeah.
um, like you even look at the history of organ meats, for example. So organ meats, um, when they tried to centralize meat production and they brought meat very like over like where it was being transported to to the different coasts, it was basically being transported from around Chicago area, and they were doing it via train. And so to get the meat to the different coasts, they had to have these cold cars, but they could only at the time back in the day they could only make cars so cold. And organ meats need to be kept colder than meat. Meat can actually be at a higher temperature and still be fine, right? As we see with aged meat and whatnot.
Sure.
Um, but organ meats cannot. And so originally, when they started to transport them to the coast, they didn't include organ meats because they didn't have the means, right? And then so when you live in certain areas and the organ meats aren't at the butcher and you don't see them there, you stop buying them. You stop and when because you don't see them, and then of course if you're not buying them and they are there, then they'll stop selling them because they need to make money.
Yeah.
So both things were happening, and then you had something like World War II happen when basically the country was concerned about a protein shortage because they were sending all the meat abroad to the soldiers. And so they actually put money into campaigns on trying to help people eat organs more often. And a lot of people don't even realize this, but like, that Meatless Mondays kind of
Yeah.
thing, that actually came around during World War II. And that was because of our government. It wasn't because of some like humane society or vegan, PETA or something like that. It was actually our government that pushed it, and they were pushing it because they were worried that if Americans didn't eat, they needed to make it so Americans weren't eating so much animal product. And so they did pushes for Meatless Mondays. They did pushes for organ meats,
Well,
and it actually worked, and then people start eating organ meats. And that's why, a lot of our grandparents, parents for some of us that are older, they all ate liver and onions growing up and stuff like that. And then it
yeah.
just kind of died down again because if people like really what happened is people when the soldiers came back, you had women who started working while they were gone, and then you had the soldiers come back. Now, two people were working in the household because the women didn't want to stop working. So it's like you had two people working in the household. And of course, when you have more money coming in, you don't want to buy the cuts that are deemed, the poverty
Lesser
cuts or
than. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. So then you have people not wanting to pay for those cheaper cuts, buying the more expensive stuff. If you're not buying it, they're not going to sell it, and uh, and then we lose favor with organ meats again. So it's just kind of fascinating to me, like this history of things. Now I'm pointing out organ meats, but you could point out anything. I mean, from raw milk. Raw milk came around because or the pasteurization of milk came around because at one point when they tried to centralize that the dairy industry, they changed how cows were being fed. They changed the environment they were being raised in, and so their milk was blue. It literally came out
Wow.
blue, and so they would like still try to pass it off as this country milk, and kids were getting sick from it. And literally, they were getting sick, and then they were like, well. And enough kids got sick. I mean, I think it was like tens of thousands of kids that got sick,
Yeah.
and some even died
Mm.
that they had to like do something about it. And so then you get pasteurization, and now they're sold on like, oh well, this is why. And then you get mad cow disease later on, and now no one gets to eat brain anymore because
Yeah.
but they all stem from the industry. It's all because of the industry was trying to either be do something different than what was natural, and they fucked everything up. And then now we all are under the guise that they're doing this for our health, they're doing this for our benefit. It's like, no, no, no. This all came from industrialization, all
Yeah.
of it.
Yeah.
It's such a
Yeah. There's
ruse.
no problem eating brain and bovine brain throughout history.
None.
What changed? It like you said, the scale, the processing, the industrialization of it.
Yeah, what they were
What
feeding the
changed?
cows. You
What
feed
changed with
cows.
milk? Same.
Yeah, nothing.
How did milk turn blue? The cows didn't do that.
Totally.
And
It's
just
like
for everybody, I'm
humans.
not
Humans do
laughing
it.
at kids dying from blue milk. I'm laughing at blue milk, not
Yeah.
the fact that children die drinking it. But yeah,
No, but
man,
it but
that's
it's once again one of those things is like that we get sold this kind of BS all the time, and we're still getting sold it, and we know better, but we're still getting sold it all the time. I mean, it's happening politically right now, and
mm.
it's like it's like
Oh boy.
I just think it's fascinating because in the industry, it's like you always just kind of it's like I don't know what to compare it to, but it's like you're crossing your fingers and you're like, oh, I hope this time it's going to be different. You know, I
Yeah.
hope this time it's for our benefit, or I hope this politician's going to do differently, or whatever it
Yeah.
is. It's like, nah, it's the same old game, just different story, or whatever, different name. And and yet I think it's very fascinating when you look at like the poultry industry, the beef industry, that these are industries that they go down a specific path of industrialization and they hit walls and they're like, oh, this isn't working. But instead of going backwards and trying to retrace their steps to go, well, maybe it's because we went here and we should go back to when it was better. They
Yeah.
go, well, no, let's just
Just
invent
keep pushing
something.
on it.
Yeah, keep pushing on where we are and just reinvent. Like let's breed the poultry, the bird differently, so then that way it doesn't get you know affected by the cage or whatever it is. You
Right.
know, like they
Like
change
just
the
force it
DNA.
through. Just force it through there.
Yeah,
Force the
I,
idea.
I've never understood that. It's I mean it's kind of no different than our Western medicine. The way we focus on we focus on the uh,
Reactive sense as opposed to proactive causal.
exactly. It's just everything gets like that, and well, here I got a question for you. So there's something that I see, and I'm curious as a trainer and someone who is really experimenting with extremism with your 30-day challenges for yourself, right? I'm curious how you look at this. So one of the questions we get asked at Pluck a lot is like, well, how much organ meat am I really getting? And I think it's a fine question, but I think it stems from a philosophy that we have in America. It's like, well, we got to go big or go home, or
Mm,
I got to go extreme, or it's not worth it.
yeah.
But I'm not really clear on if anything extreme is ever sustainable. And you've been doing all these 30-day challenges. It's like don't you think sustainability? Would you say that sustainability trumps almost anything else, like the extremism, the philosophy, like that? If you can't sustain it, then what's the point?
Good question. I think the first thing that comes to mind is the quote of, the best diet for you is the one you can keep, or the one that you can stick to. The best workout plan for you is the one that you can stick to. The best, insert whatever you want is the one you can stick to. There's a reason people say that because it's true. If you tell someone, hey, we're going to go on this 30-day challenge of blank, okay, cool. Like, are you white knuckling it the whole way through? Are you enjoying it? Is it purely utilitarian? Is there legitimate satisfaction out of it? Or like, what's the user experience like? What's the cost, like opportunity cost? What's the cost on the body, the mind, and the emotions? I don't know. Like, I think all it's difficult to quantify, and it could be very subjective and different, very subjective based on persons, right? But I think that phrase of, the best one for you is the one you can keep to holds a lot of water.
Yeah.
Now, at the same time, it's hard to gauge that based on person's level of conviction.
What do you
Meaning,
mean by
like,
that?
well, like the one you can keep to. Well, the one I can keep to is, fucking donuts and Slurpees.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, okay, well, good for you. But the one I can keep to is blank, or the routine I can keep to is blank. Well, I think it's about will and desire and accountability with yourself. Like, you have to be honest with what you want. If, like, you don't care, or like you're not trying to do something, or you're good with eating donuts and Slurpees and saying this is the diet I'm going to keep to because this is what I want. All right, well then you're getting exactly what you deserve because you're getting exactly what you're putting in. Fine. But if you're saying if you're complaining about the result of whatever it might be, whether it's with the diet or nutrition program, or trying to self-actualize, or just change your business, if the input is not equitable to the result, then you need to reevaluate that. And I think that's where the human gets in trouble. That's where the human becomes the issue, and it's not the protocol, it's not the system, but it's the person. You know, kind of that old adage of it's not the plane, it's the pilot. You know,
Right.
like, hey, we're flying the same plane here, but like, why am I able to stay straight and level and you're all over the fucking place? Like, it's not the plane, it's the pilot. And I think the operator is you know, we are burdened by this thing called free will as human beings. And, you know, the human body is this perfect, objective, straightforward, matter of fact communicator. Sick, Scared, and Stupid is brought to you by Life Like Us, a brand dedicated to empowering individuals to reclaim their health, strength, and clarity in a world that often profits from confusion and compromise. Life Like Us believes in the power of self-determination and the pursuit of personal excellence. Their mission is to inspire a return to natural, unaltered lifestyles that support health the way nature intended. Each product is designed and produced proudly in the USA, using only the highest quality materials to share a meaningful message. By choosing Life Like Us, you're not just purchasing apparel. You're joining a movement that values discipline, self-actualization, and the courage to take control of your health. Visit thelifelikeus.com to explore the full collection and become part of a community dedicated to clarity, strength, and truth. Hey, James, we're cold. It's cold outside. If you can't tell, I'm going to send you some shivers and some goosebumps. Get a little clammy in the hands. But, you know, if you don't take care of us soon, like we're going to really have to lower the heart rate. We're going to get pretty cold in the extremities, might get a little frostbitten, and eventually we're going to get hypothermic, and then eventually we're going to die. Just letting you know. This is the messenger of the body providing the envelope. Take with it what you want. And you go, all right, Roger that. It's a bitter, you know, spring here in Massachusetts. Let me bundle up. Let me get the gloves on. And the body goes, oh, thank you. Fast forward a couple months. It's summertime. We're out in the desert. It's hot. Hey, James, we're getting a little warm out here. We're going to send some sweat. In case you don't realize that, we're going to send a little bit of lightheadedness because we're getting kind of hypoxic. You don't take care of us eventually, we're going to get clammy, or our temperature is going to rise, then it's going to fall. Then we're going to get a heat stroke, eventually exhaustion, eventually death. And you choose not to listen to us. Well, those things take place, and then eventually you die. The body didn't mess that up. Free will did. The same thing happens with what we eat.
Yeah.
James, oh my God, I love pizza, but every time I eat it, I get bloaty and gassy and sleepy. Well, then guess what, Jake? You don't love pizza. You emotionally like it. You have an attachment to it socially or through pop culture or for whatever reason, but your body is literally telling you plain and simply, it does not like this. Oh my God, I love red wine. It's the best. But every time I drink it, I get a histamine response. Or actually, I'm not even going to say that. Every time I get it, I get flushed in the neck and I get sniffly and I get kind of tingly in my hands. Well, that would be a histamine response. Person doesn't think that. They just go, whatever, I don't care. I love red wine. You don't. Your body couldn't be more obvious in telling you that. So kind of using that as a long-winded metaphor and soliloquy to answer the original question of like, yeah, the sustainability of it. I agree with you on the matter of fact of that being something sustainable is probably the better option as opposed to something extreme. But at the same time, irrespective of its extremism or sustainability, it's the human that's either going to fuck it up or that's going to see it through, because you can't discount the 1%er. You know, that lone warrior who's willing to go the distance in the extreme sense, or that lone warrior who has the discipline to maintain the one that's sustainable. And for most people, it's that human plague of free will that allows us to choose to do otherwise.
Well, what I hear you saying too, I love this conversation, and what I hear you saying too is in a sense, it's like, so those 1%ers, either way, the top performers or even the underperformers, is they're all providing either inspiration or contrast,
Mm-hmm.
right? For the 99% of us who are just trying to figure it all out, right? But ultimately, what I hear you saying is that at the end of the day, no matter what your mindset is of what you want to do or not do, there is a companion with you always who will never lie to you, who will always guide you true. And all we have to do is listen to him or her, and that's your body, right? It's like
Yep.
you just got to listen. And but I guess what I find fascinating is that I guess what I think is happening a lot of times is that either A, people are not listening, which we know that for sure, or B, they're only tuned to one channel. So they're only listening through their lens, and they're not seeing all the other things that are going on, like even what we were talking about earlier. Like before I knew to think about food and water, I got a kidney stone. And so the
Yep.
kidney stone was life saying, like my body saying, hey, what you're doing is not working. And it
Yep.
took me that extremity for me to be like putting the brakes on everything and going, oh, I got to stop drinking root beer and eating all this pizza. I got to drink some water. You know what I mean? Like,
I used to love root beer. Shout out to
right.
Barks Root Beer in
Yeah,
Louisiana.
right. Oh, that was
God
my
bless you.
favorite back in the day too. So it's like
Bottled Barks, man. Oh
I
yeah.
loved it. Loved it. So it's like it took that extremity, and sadly most people, one of the anyone that works in the industry will tell you this, is that people only typically make food changes, health changes, when
In
they either get
response.
sick, yeah, in response to either they get sick or someone they love gets sick. So
Yep.
why does it take that? Why does it take that extremity for people to make what can be a very simple change,
Yep.
right?
Oh, dude, that's great. You know, I kind of joke sadistically about this, but truthfully, that because the same thing it is now, with all the testing and experimentation and everything that I've been doing the last really 5 years, hard 10 years, but the last 5 years really. I don't want to believe it still.
Hmm.
I test the theories. I rebel rather against them, lash out, and we'll go on a tangent of trying something else or including this or all right, I haven't had a Coke in a minute. Let me have one of those things. Like I haven't had a donut in a while. Let me have one of those things. Like, yeah, I've had processed foods in the last 5 years. Yeah, I've had a Coca-Cola within the last. Yeah, like I've had donuts or a bag of Skittles or something. Yeah, yeah, because I don't want to believe still that those choices are so impactful. I don't want to believe it. But as much as I don't want to believe it, I can't argue with the hypothesis and kind of to the backbone of the scientific method is like you're not trying to prove theory or rather create law by way of theory. You're constantly, as a job of a scientist, is to test the hypothesis for fallibility. You're constantly trying to test it in efforts to disprove. And I just can't disprove this, man.
Hmm.
No matter how bad I test it, no matter how many times, no matter how many times I have to bang my head into the concrete wall. Maybe it'll crack this time. Maybe it'll crack this time. And then I'm just like, fuck, I broke my nose again. Every time, it never ceases to show otherwise. On the other hand, when I eat clean food, as God, creator, mother nature would have made it and asked for it to be grown, birthed, or otherwise, man, I don't get sick. I don't feel depressed. I sleep great. My body doesn't, I don't have gas. I don't fart. I don't have indigestion. I mean, like, physiologically, it's just like, for the last, I don't know, I hardly ever brush my teeth with toothpaste. I just use water most of the time. Like,
Wow. And
you know,
I met you in person. Your teeth are beautiful. They're bright
like,
white,
thanks.
and you have good breath. Like that's super impressive.
Yeah, like, I don't shower with, or I haven't used deodorant in years.
Wouldn't have known
Um,
that. Yeah, that's amazing.
And it's like that was all, and I used to wake up, I literally used to have my friends would joke and say my dragon breath in the morning because I would have so much film and shit on my tongue. I was just like, it's a phase I'm going through. It can't be related to my diet or, oh, it's because I smoke or it's like, but I would have never thought it was something so simple as, like you said, a few little changes. And then all of a sudden, like my fucking nails grow so fast. My hair grows so fast. Like, it's annoying how often I have to cut my fingernails because of how fast they grow now.
Yeah.
Whereas in the past, I feel like I'd cut my nails like once a month. Now it's like weekly, easy. And I'm like, I don't want that to be the truth. Like, I just wish it wasn't that way, but it is, man. It is that clear. And to tell that to people, it's like, look, I'm as human as you in the fact that I don't want to believe it. So to your question, why don't we know? Are we not in tune? Is it that we can't listen? I think it's because we don't want to believe it. I think
Mm.
we are in tune. I think everyone is in tune and realizes that when you say, like, hey, I love pizza, but every time I eat it, it makes me sick. Like, you're literally verbalizing your, I don't want to say ignorance or stupidity, but like, you're literally verbalizing your non-compliance.
Yeah, that's a good word. The non-compliance. Yeah, totally.
And like, we say that with such disregard and just, blase, but like, it's so obvious because we're that conditioned, poisoned, brainwashed, or in that much denial because it's something that's so dear to us. It's so near. It's so omnipresent. It's part of life. It's part of our culture, our society, our religion. It's part of everything. We have such emotional attachment to the experiential, you know, element that is food, that the escapism that it provides us. Don't tell me that that's the missing link to my health is what I think is embedded in so much of our consciousness. It's like, don't come at me there. You can tell me where to change my life and critique me on what I'm doing wrong as a human being, but don't you dare talk about my fucking food because it's
Yeah.
something that's too innate to us, like, hey, clown on me for how much I drink. Clown on me that I do too much coke. Clown on me that I, whatever, I'm a womanizer, a gambler, or this addict or whatever. Fine. But, you know, eating, drinking, and by drinking I mean water, breathing and sleeping. Those are the four vitals of life for a human being. Eating, breathing, sleeping, and drinking. You attack any one of those four, you're going to get a pretty radical response. You take away somebody's breath. Ooh, we can't do that for long. There can be tremendous benefit in breath work. There can be tremendous benefit in static breath holding, free diving, etc. The euphoria, the inward introspective experience that is gained from that can be fantastic. But obviously, it's not something we can do for a long time. You take away someone's sleep. Oh, we know that's very effective for interrogation. Why? Because it induces this radical response of stress. Yikes, we cannot go very long as human beings without sleep. You touched on it earlier or off before the show started. Stress is a mofo and sleep is woohoo right there at the top. Drinking water. We know we can't go without water for very long. Dry fast, a week you could do it. It's damn hard. 10 days, it's getting harder. Double digit days, dry fast, we're getting critical. We have to have water to live. Food, the ultimate. Of the four of them, food is the least important. We can't get far without breathing. We can't get far without sleep, and we can't get far without water. We can get the furthest, though, without food.
Yeah, it carries the most emotional weight.
Yet it carries the most emotional weight. Weird. Like, paradoxically, it is the least important to our overall homeostasis, lifespan, what immediate health, yet it carries the most emotional weight. And that is why I say, like, you can tell me I need to kick my cocaine addiction. I need to stop drinking. I need to make these changes, blah, blah. But don't you dare talk about my fucking food because it's very near to us. We know that innately and subconsciously, we know that it's something that's required for us to live. And at the same time, it's something that's very omnipresent. The cocaine habit, you usually can't do that so openly like you can with food.
Sure.
It's a lot harder to, I can't sit on an airplane and take key bumps. I mean,
Right.
I could figure out a way to do it.
But you can eat
But
chips and cookies.
yeah, man. And not only that, the fucking tray is like stuffed. It's like, would you like one of these things? I got a whole tray of this shit for you. Like, go to town. I'm like, no, I'm fine. Thank you. You really should try the cookies. I'm really okay. you don't want anything to drink either? Like, we've got all this free liquor. You can have as much as you want. No, I'm fine. Are you sure? We're landing in New Orleans. And I'm like, I'm fucking from here. Like, yeah. But I'm like, no, thank you. I'm fine. Are you sure? We'll get you a double. And I'm like, Jesus Christ. Like, it's that intense, man. Because
Yeah.
that is so, we're so hooked on that. And I
Well, I
think it's
mean,
not just about what it gives to us. I think it's the escapism that
oh,
it gives to us,
definitely.
man.
Well, it's like that, but also look at how we're socialized, right? Everything we either celebrate or reward ourselves with
Or
is
mourn.
either
Hey, you recently mourned something. Was there not food at the afterward? Right? You had to
exactly.
eat.
There's
People had to eat.
food, but it's like it's like you're taught like, oh, had a bad day. Well, here, eat this ice cream. Let me take you to ice cream. Oh, had a good day.
Yeah.
Well, let's go reward ourselves with ice cream.
Yep.
It's like it's at the end of it and the beginning. It's like
Yep.
every experience is capped with it, right?
Absolutely.
And so we're taught to respond like that. You know, the thing that I'm finding, like, the only thing that's truly helping me with changing my eating habits and like not kind of like indulging in these things that I know my body doesn't respond well to, the only things that are truly helping me are a knowing my why, like
Mm.
knowing why does this matter to me, why does my health matter. So having that clearly drawn out, like clearly labeled, and something that I can actually ground to no differently than someone might ground down with their religion, right? You got
Mm.
to know your why. And then the other one is kind of exactly what you're saying. It's like, dude, I know that when I eat this, I feel like shit. So I'm not going to bring it in my house. Like, cause I know if I bring it in my house, I don't have a limit. Like, I don't have a stop. Like, if it's there, I'll eat it.
No.
It's like, so it's almost like just admitting, hey, I'm human and I'm going to fuck up. Like, basically, you're just
Pint size ice
admitting that.
cream. Pint
Yeah,
size, like, that's a single serving.
totally. I am the same way, man. I don't have an off switch. So I can either continue to fight that and pretend I do, or pretend like, no, it's going to be better this time. It's like,
Yep.
no, it's never fucking better.
Yep.
I'm always going to have, it's like it's like addicts when they talk about like once an addict, always an addict. It's like
Yeah.
even if you're not drinking, that's why you can't have that one drink, because it
Yep.
propels you into doing more.
Yep.
And it's the same thing with the junk food. It's like, so I've just learned, like, if I don't want to eat it, it's got to be out of sight, out of mind. And as I just take ownership of that intelligence, that emotional intelligence, I don't do it. And then couple that with what you already said, which is now you're eating cleanly, you're eating foods that are like that are nutrient dense, then you don't crave it. Like,
Yep.
if you're serving, ensuring that your intelligence around what works or doesn't work for you, as long as you're honoring that, you know your why, and then you're eating well, you won't have an issue. You don't have to diverge.
Yep.
But any of those break down and you're right back, right back in the thick of it all.
Oh, and it's very well camouflaged. Like, there's a thing you say in recovery about, like, whether it's with booze or powder or whatever, like, all the time you're in recovery, all the time you're getting sober, alcohol's out there doing push-ups.
Yeah.
Cocaine's just outside the door doing fucking burpees, waiting for you.
Waiting. It's
And
calling
like
your
somebody's
name
like,
always. It's always in the
yeah,
wind.
yeah, it's just waiting. It's waiting for you to go, hey, I'm back, and it's like, draw, fuck, right? But like, I think about that all the time, man. I was watching, the show Hot Ones, the guys on YouTube
Yes.
eating the wings. I
Yep.
was watching an episode the other day, and David Beckham was on there, and he's great. He's a gentleman. He's cool, and he's an ambassador for Stella Artois, the beer. And so there was a special like Stella, episode, and they were having beer while they were eating the wings. Man, I'm telling you, I haven't had a drink in years, and it looked so good with the wings. Like, and I just immediately took me right back to being in a bar, watching the game, eating wings. Like, there's no harm in that, right? There's no harm in that. But for me, I think about that and I'm like, if I do that, what happens tomorrow? What happens the next day or a week from then? Then I have another one. And then maybe 2 weeks from then, I have a couple. And then, a month from then, it's more than a couple. And then I'm looking for a bag, you
Yep.
know, like that cascading effect is so quick. And it all comes from this just really cool, glimpse into a moment where I was like, God, that looks so good and refreshing. And it, cleansing their palates and cooling down the spice. I was like, it looks so good. And David Beckham made it look so fucking cool and sexy. And I'm like, I can do that. Like, I know I can do that. I want to know. I want to think I can do that.
Yeah.
But food is just like that. You get off these things, you kick the habit, whatever, but like the itch, the grip, whatever you want to call it, is so strong that all we're thinking about is like, all right, I did my 30 days of this diet, or I've got 60 days, or I've got 100, whatever, years under the belt. But man, I'd sure love some of those Reese's Pieces. I'd sure love whatever your candy device, whatever it is, like Mountain Dew. It's like that shit is what got you to where you were in the first place. And all this work that you've done and all this healthy eating and living that you've put together to change all that is what's brought you out of that. Yet the grip is so strong, like we just can't wait. When can I fit it back into my life? When can I just get a taste? When can I just get a little bump back in? And it's that same level of disguise, or the same kind of disguise that'll creep back in, and it'll be in the form of your daughter or your niece or your grandmother or your mother. I mean, just it'll, hey, Uncle Jake, you want to go? I'm like, fuck.
Or
Looking at
yeah,
my
or
little
the
baby.
FOMO, right? The
Oh,
FOMO. Oh,
looking
like
at
it's
my
just
godchild. We
just
come out of the country
this
club
one
pool a
time.
couple weeks ago, and she's like, "Can we go get blah blah blah?" And I'm like, "Yes, we can absolutely go get a snowball." Like fuck. Granted,
Yeah.
luckily it was really clean. And they had actual watermelon juice for the watermelon flavor. Save me God. But in the past, hey, can we go get ice cream? And cookies and this and that. And like, I want to get the. And I'm like, fuck. It's so
See,
well camouflaged. But as soon as that happens, whether it's in that day or the next day or the next week or something, like the itch and the response is a lot tighter.
this. So what's interesting though, and I've been challenging myself this as a father and as a man, really, because I think that men fall into this realm more often than women, particularly if it's your child. So father mother kind of difference is that basically from my experience, men connect with their kids or their nieces or nephews through food a lot of
Yeah.
times. It's kind of how we were trained. Like, oh, I want to take you on a special experience. Well, what's a special experience? It's getting some kind of junk. That's
Yeah.
what that's what it is. That's how we were raised to think. And so I've been really challenging myself. Well, actually, let me step back. So when I work with couples, or when I work in the past, when I worked with families to help them kind of shift their diets with their food and everything, it was always showing up as the male, the man, the husband was the one thwarting the diet every single time. And it's either because he was second guessing it, like, well, this doesn't matter, or he was just like he only had a limited time with his daughter or son, and he was like, oh, I gotta make them feel special. And how do you make
Yeah.
someone feel special? You give them junk, right? So I fall into that category even in my own family. Like, my wife's a functional nutritionist, I'm a chef. Like, I know we both know better, and she does know better, and she does do better, and I'm the one that sometimes brings it in because I'm like, well, I don't want our kids to feel different. Like, kind of like what you were saying, like every
Yeah.
other kid had the Lunchables and you didn't. It's like, so
Yeah.
sometimes I'm just trying to find like the healthiest version of that junk food so
Yeah.
that my kids don't feel so freaking different.
Yeah.
And so now, and this is really just this year. I mean, honestly, I'm like, I'm challenging myself to connect with my kids on a one-on-one, like just connect with them as people, not around food, not around junk. And it could still be experiences, but not food-based experiences.
Yes. Yes.
So I'm really challenging myself to do that. And I gotta say, it's hard. It's challenging, but the more I do it, the easier it gets. And I gotta say, man, the connections are going so much deeper.
Yeah.
Like, we'll play cards together or something like that. So we'll play like gin rummy, or go fish for my younger daughter, whatever it is. And
Yeah.
that's all we're doing. We're just playing cards and talking.
Yeah.
But that experience, is way better than taking them to go get an ice cream.
Yes.
Way better.
Yeah, everything gets predicated on that. It's like it's the same thing with alcohol. Like, oh, you only like me when you're drinking?
Yep.
You only talk to me when you're drinking? We only sleep together when we're drinking? You can only be cool and dancing when you're drink like that's bullshit. It's bullshit. Like yeah, all he ever talks about is food or like, hey, that's great, James. You're a chef. I love you, man. But it's like, dude, can we talk about something else? Like, I know
Totally.
you got more depth than that. Like, I love hanging out with you, James, but like, we don't have to eat every time we hang out. Like, we can go to a game or like, and we don't have to eat at the game or like, we can fucking go swimming or like whatever. But it doesn't
Oh,
have to be about that.
dude, one of the hardest things I have. So I was telling you I moved to Massachusetts a year ago, right? And so I'm meeting new people. And what's the first thing that a lot of the men that I meet say? Oh yeah, let's hang out. Let's go to a
Let's
bar.
grab a
And I'm
beer.
like, let's go get a beer. And I'm like, I don't drink. So now what do you want to do?
Yeah.
And they're like, oh, okay.
Yeah.
It gets a little
Yeah.
awkward,
Yeah.
right? But it's
Especially
like,
if you're in like Boston too. And it's like, oh,
yeah,
okay.
seriously, right? It's really, I mean, on so many levels, sometimes we tell these stories and we wrap our identities around these stories that we're so convinced, like, oh, we have to connect through food or we have to connect through alcohol or drugs or whatever. And it's like, man, I'm just trying to rewrite all those stories.
Yeah.
Even the story. So now I'm going to take it back even to organ meats. So this is fascinating. I'm really curious about your thoughts on this. So we source our organ meats. So Pluck has 5 organs. It's got liver, heart, kidney, spleen, and pancreas. Okay. We source them from New Zealand. New Zealand's an island. It it feeds their cows green grass year round.
Yeah.
We source it from farms that they're not regenerative. It's like that's hard to find in New Zealand, but they are 100% grass fed, and they definitely are healthier than any CAFO out there. They're very clean farms. Um, so that's why we're sourcing there, right? And I went to a new purveyor this year, and I asked them, hey, can you send me the nutritionals from your third party testing on your organ meats? And so they send them to me. And the numbers that are in this third party test, so they have nothing to do with this, right? And this is a company, the third party testing company, the lab, they are very well respected. And the numbers that come back around the nutritionals for these organ meats are completely different than anything I am finding online. Like I can't. I'm going to all the
In a
organ
good
meat.
way, different, or in a bad way, different?
Good or bad would be a judgment based on your desired outcome. So like they might have more cholesterol than people realize, right?
Got it.
But in my judgment, in a good way, like they were
Got it.
higher. They were
Got it.
higher in things.
I should
But
have said higher or lower
yeah,
percentages.
yeah.
Higher or
So
lower
so
concentration.
they were higher concentrations. Um, on most of the things. Some of the things were a little lower, but for the things that I think we would care about, they were higher.
So like you're
And
looking at these and you're like, did you guys miss a decimal place or something?
no, seriously, that's what I'm doing. I'm like, what the hell is going on here? So, and I'm looking at all the organ meat supplement companies. I'm looking at there's Recipal, which is where a lot of companies get their nutritionals. I'm going to as many sources as I can find. I cannot find an identical source. And so where the big aha I had was like, oh shit, this is Jurassic Park. So we're thinking that our food is like we want to eat food that is natural, but we're trying to pretend that the nutritionals in that food are unnatural, meaning that they are just always the same.
Yeah.
That is the zygous that we have. We think that all beef, whether it's muscle meat or organ meats, is going to be the same nutritionals, and we look for those exact same nutritionals every time, right?
Yeah.
But they're not. It's a wild it's an animal that if it's 100% grass fed, it's pasture, it's out in the wild. We just experienced that in Wyoming. We
Yeah.
saw the ranch.
Yep.
Those cows were wild on pasture.
Yeah.
They're
Miles
not
away.
watching them 24/7, right? They're
Right.
not like
Right.
observing and making sure like, oh, that cow just ate this, it can't eat that. They're letting them roam, right?
Right.
So this is for all intents and purposes a wild animal to a degree, right? And so of course the nutritionals are going to be different. They're going to be based on the season. They're going to be based on what the freaking cows are eating that
Yeah.
day.
What's
It's
that
going to be
soil's
based on the
like?
breed. It's going to
Yeah.
be based on everything. And yet we're all treating it like it's a freaking canned response. And I was like, so part of me was like, well, duh. But then the other part is like, oh shit, like this health is truly an illusion. Like people are thinking on every regard in our food system, every regard. People are thinking that they are getting something that they may not be getting. They might be getting it, but they may not. But we're
Yeah.
assuming we're getting it. And that goes from when you think, well, something's organic, it's supposed to be fit these regulations. Well, guess what? It may not, because they randomly check things. They don't check every one. They randomly check things. And then I've heard even things that sometimes even organic crops can be dried with glyphosate. Well, organic is not supposed to have glyphosate, but yet it can be an organic crop grown organically, but then they'll dry it, the
God.
grain or the legume, with glyphosate, and yet they can still label it organic.
Because it was
So there's
grown organic.
Exactly. So there's this constant but this thought in our society that we are eating, or we're working so hard to do this, and that we are spending so much of our energy on the minutia, on these extreme details of things.
Yeah.
And I just sometimes wonder, like, well,
At what cost?
yeah, what cost, or does it actually really matter? Are we spending too much time in the freaking weeds? Like maybe we should be focusing more on like broad strokes. And
Yeah.
to a degree, you've already mentioned some of them. Like, okay, like if I were to create a food paradigm or food pyramid now, like my broad strokes of a pyramid would be very simple, because I believe simple is sustainable, because it's got to go back to,
Totally.
is it sustainable,
Totally.
right?
Totally.
So my food pyramid would be top of pyramid, real food, like real flavors found in nature. So flavor of what you're eating has got to be found in nature. So you're looking for foods that don't have artificial flavors or natural flavors. I'm using air quotes for people that can't see it, because we can have natural flavors that are still,
Artificial.
artificial,
Yeah.
right? They're not real. So we're looking for foods that have flavors found in nature. Middle of the pyramid is now nutrient dense foods, just nutrient dense foods, whatever works for your body, nutrient dense. That's the key. And then the very bottom, mindfully eat it. And that goes back to what we already said, is like, you got to listen to your body. You got to be in a relaxed state. You got to like be mindful of your stress levels. What you got to sleep well, because sleeping well is going to help you make better decisions around what you put in your mouth. But like, it's like, just mindfully eat, chew your
Yeah.
food, allow yourself to actually use these biological senses, this kind of, I like we call it the lingual neural response. When you eat your food and you allow your body's communication pathways to inform the body and the brain of when it is full or not. If we go
Yep.
too fast, we can't. It doesn't catch up, right? That's when we overeat
Sure.
and
Sure.
whatnot.
Sure. Sure. Sure.
So it's like those three things to me that's the primary goal. Just do those three things, and then maybe those other things, whether the food is organic or not, or whether the meat is 100% grass fed or not, maybe those things are like, well, yeah, worry about those if you have the time and you have the money, but don't get bogged down with the details, and don't get so overwhelmed that you're not actually doing the three necessary things you
Mm.
need to do to keep, be healthy.
Oh man, I'll finish that up with the kind of thing I said at the panel when we were in Wyoming. Spoiler alert to everybody. You can shop at the lowest priced grocery store around, and you can reverse type 2 diabetes on bologna and hot dogs. Period.
Hmm.
Straight up. It doesn't have to be glamorous. It doesn't have to be sexy. It doesn't have to be grass-fed, grass-finished, Kobe, Wagyu, a Cowshe, Angus, call it whatever. It doesn't have to be. You can literally reverse type 2 diabetes shopping at the lowest price grocery store around you with hot dogs and bologna. That's how powerful whole food is. Real whole food is. The most lowly priced, lowly graded animal food is always going to be better and more nutritious and healthy for you than the highest grade of processed biochemically engineered nonsense. Because the single most effective thing we can do as human beings in regard to our health is controlling what we put into our mouths. And man, I'm glad
Amen.
you're in the
Amen.
forefront. I'm glad you're at the forefront of trying to help people do that, man. What can you give us some tastes, flavor about what's going on in Pluck right now, what's coming up in the future, where we can find you, where do we buy
Oh,
from you,
well,
etc.
I'm super excited. So we've got 4 offerings right now. We've got 3 flavors. One's called original, one's spicy, mild, zesty garlic. We use Redmond real salt mixed with organic spices, herbs, and then all 5 of those organs I mentioned earlier: liver, heart, kidney, spleen, pancreas. And then we have one that's just the organs. It's called pure. And I am excited to say that we have new flavors coming out. We are going to be putting out a brain product. I
Ah.
am so freaking excited about that, Jake. I can't wait to make brain available to people. We're going to be coming out with other species, some bison blends. We're going to be coming out. Oh, yeah. Okay. Here's, I got one for you. So you did the 30-day challenge of eating just sardines, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to be coming out with a blend that is the whole sardine. So not
Oh
not the
God.
fillets, the whole sardine. It's freeze dried and powdered, and the whole sardine.
Sick. That's
Is that
all, and I mean
wild?
sick
And
in a
I'm going to
good way.
make it
Yeah,
taste
dude.
good. I'm going to
Yeah,
make
no,
it
no. I
taste
mean sick in a
good.
good way. That's amazing.
Yeah. And it's going to be a way for people to get the bones, the head, the fillet, like all of it
So
without
I'm
any
in, dog.
added
I'm in.
freaking, you know, oils or anything like that. Like I
I'm
said,
in.
it's going to be good.
I'll definitely be come next month when I finish the current thing that I'm working on right now, and I'll be back in the seasoning lab for sure. So I'll be plucking like a motherfucker.
I love it, man. I love it. I love it. But yeah, people can find us. They can find us at eatpluck.com. They can find us on Amazon. We should get a we should create a discount code for anyone that's following you as well. Or you have one
Can do
actually.
that. Yeah, I got that. I got mine for sure. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Life Like Jake.
So
To anybody that's listening, shop at eatpluck.com. Discount code Life Like Jake. We're gonna include it all
good.
in the show notes too. Where to find you, where to shop, more on yourself too, James. And last question for you: where did the
Yeah.
name come from?
Oh, so that's what's so interesting. So I wish I came up with it, but I hired this branding company and they brought me 3 options, and this was all during COVID. So we launched during COVID, and which was fascinating because here I have a product that is brand new. No one knows what it tastes like, and I can't actually get it to. I can't get people to taste it because there's nothing open.
Yeah.
So I got creative with that one, and it all worked out. But basically, what happened is so in their research, they came back to me with pluck, and they said, well, pluck actually refers to animal organs. It's an old term. I think it was back in the 20s and 30s, where if you got your animal, they say, "Hey, you want your pluck with that," and they were referring to the liver, the organs.
Oh,
And so
very
it's a
cool.
literally it's a term that was referring to animal organs. And of course, we none of us practice that these days because organs aren't as part of Americans' cuisine as they used to
Yeah.
be. And then of course we associate pluck with chickens from
Yeah.
plucking feathers or a plucky
Yeah.
attitude. But I was like, well, I think we could take this back because I really like the. I was around all these kids when I heard the name because we were potting with some family. I'm talking. This is the early days of when everyone was stuck at home and stuff like that. And so we were potting with this 2 other families, and I just started asking kids. I'm like, hey, kids, pretend that you're like you're at a grocery store and you're asking your parent where the pluck is. And they're all walking around going, where's the pluck? Where's the pluck? Hey, can you tell me where the pluck is? And I was like, I love it. I was like, yes. I'm like, pluck is the word, man, because
That's
it's like it
great.
rolls off the tongue. And whenever anyone eats it, I can say, you just got plucked. I pluck,
Oh,
yeah.
nice.
There's so many things you can do with the word, of
What
course.
the pluck? Pluck it. Pluck, yeah.
Pluck it. Pluck,
Oh,
yeah.
dude.
Like, I know I need you to come up with a good T-shirt for you. You're so good with T-shirts. I need you to come up with a good
I,
T-shirt
I
name
I
for
think
me.
I can figure that out.
All right, I'll take any suggestions.
Dude, it's thanks for being here today, James, and for doing what you do, man. It was a blast listening to you and talking with you and sharing your story. Really appreciate it.
Well, hey, I just want to give a shout out and honor you too. And I don't know how often you get this perspective, but you know, we've been with each other on socials, interacting on socials. So I'd only seen you there, and then I got to meet you in person. And not every influencer out there actually walks their talk, and you are someone that does. You were genuine heart, genuine like heart. You showed up with your heart, your intelligence, and you just and your kindness. And I just want to honor you for that, because like I said, not everyone walks their talk, and you, my friend, do. And it's a pleasure to have met you, and it's a pleasure to know you now.
Thanks, man. Likewise. I say that to, it's a reflection back on you. So if I was in a good, if it was received well, it's because it's what I was getting on my side too. So right back at you, man. And
Yeah.
James has actually implanted another seed in my brain about a potential 30-day thing that if and when it unveils, I'll let you guys know where the inspiration came from for it. So more on that later, but otherwise, Chef James Barry, founder and owner of Pluck. Again, we'll have all the notes for you in the show notes about where you can find at eatpluck.com and understanding yes, organs blended in seasoning. Who would have thought? But this guy, crazy as he is, figured it out, and now he's rocking and rolling. So thank you, Chef James Barry. Thank you to everybody else for another episode of Sick, Scared, and Stupid. I'm your host, Jake Thomas. We'll see you next time.